Hello YouTube, Brian here. This is the first video that I took in Singapore and it's about the Flower Dome. So enjoy the footage. So I'm back in Taiwan now and now I can start editing and putting together all my footage and video that I took in Singapore and start releasing it to you guys. So like I said, yeah, this first video is about the Flower Dome. And how did we get there? We took the Singapore MRT. Yes, Singapore has an MRT, an underground subway system, just like Taiwan does in Taipei and Kaohsiung. So we took that from the downtown station to, I believe, the Bayfront station. And we went inside and it was air conditioned. And as you can see here, beautiful with so many varieties of plants and flowers and trees from everywhere: Madagascar, Australia, North America, South America, Asia, anywhere you can think of. They had all kinds of plants and whatnot. Okay, cool. So enjoy this footage, and also I just want to take this time to talk about my, what could I say, my initial, or well, my reaction to Singapore, my impressions of Singapore, I should say. So what do I think about that? Singapore, I thought it would be clean. It was very, very clean. I was told it was going to be very expensive. It turned out to be, yes, very, very expensive. It surprised me how much expensive it was actually, coming from Taiwan where everything is quite cheap. Everything in Singapore seems to be very, very expensive. Singapore, just like Hong Kong, is very racially diverse. It seems maybe even a little bit more racially diverse than Hong Kong. And also language. Me and my wife, I guess, expected that there would be more Guoyu or Chinese in spoken in Singapore, but there wasn't. It seems like in Singapore you don't really need Chinese Mandarin. You can just get around with English, no problem. It seems everyone speaks English in Singapore without any kind of issue. So there's that. That kind of threw me for a loop a few times. I caught myself speaking Chinese or saying thank you or saying something in Chinese when I didn't really need to. What else can I say? The food in Singapore is fantastic. It's a good mix of Indian, Malay, Chinese, European influences as well. That was delicious. I had a lot of good meals in Singapore. The weather was hot and steamy, as I expected. Unfortunately, the air quality was not good at all when we were there. I'll get into that more later. That's a story in itself. And people in Singapore are very friendly, it seems, at least to me in my, like, touristy eyes, I suppose. People were pretty, in general, friendly. We only had, I think, maybe one rude incident with one Chinese-looking gentleman on the MRT. So the people there seemed pretty nice. I found it kind of a little bit difficult to understand sometimes when they were speaking Singlish to me, which is its own kind of accent with its own kind of regional slangs and whatever. You hear people say la a lot, or walao, or other kind of stuff like that. There's whole videos about that kind of thing. Okay, so traveling with a baby in Singapore, I can talk about that, since this was our first trip really abroad with my son, and our first kind of major trip we've taken, period, with my little son, who is now a year old. He turned 1 year old in September, which is almost over at this point. So what's it like going to Singapore or traveling with a little young boy? I think I mentioned in my Singapore expectations video that I expected to be challenged by him, and I was. He's a good little boy. He did pretty good on the plane flights. He got a little upset, though, because he's very active and energetic, and he had to sit still for 4.5 hours. That's how long it takes from Taoyuan Airport to Changi Airport in Singapore. Also, the pressure change kind of bothered him, so it took a little effort to keep him entertained and to keep him happy and to keep him comfortable on the plane. But that was all right. Once we got to Singapore, things were pretty easy. Singapore has good transportation. They have their taxis, which were fine. We never had an issue with any of the taxis there. They have the MRT, like I mentioned. The MRT stations all have elevators, which is important when you're pushing a little baby around in a stroller. The hotel we stayed at was a very good hotel. They provided a crib for us, for my little son to sleep in. The food at the restaurant in the hotel had congee, which, if you don't know what congee is, it's like a rice porridge which babies can eat. It's commonly fed to babies all over East Asia. So that was good. He did all right with the climate. Taiwan and Singapore's climate is not that much different from each other, so he didn't really have an issue with that. We had little portable fans that we brought along to keep him cooled off, and I think he had a pretty good time. We took him swimming for the first time, which was great for him. It turns out he really loves the water. We all had a very wonderful time in Singapore. Would I go back to Singapore? Yeah, I think so. I think I'd go back to Singapore. There's a lot of places I've never been to before that I'd like to go back, that I'd like to go to before I go back to Singapore. But yeah, I think I would go back to Singapore if I had the money and if I had the time, because there's things that we didn't get to do there. So yeah. Alright, YouTube, thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video and the upcoming videos that I have about Singapore and everything that we did in Singapore on our trip. Okay, thank you. Please comment, rate, subscribe, etc. Share this video. Bye-bye.